Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Osoyoos Committee of the Whole, March 11th, 2025 at 9 a.m. in Council Chambers. So we will first need the approval of the agenda, and I'm assuming there are no late items. Thank you. Could we have that, please? Councillor Bennett, Councillor Chong, all in favor? Thank you. And we need the adoption of the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting on February the 25th, 2025. Could we have Councillor King, Councillor Poderica, all in favor? Thank you very much. So we will move on to petitions and delegations. And this morning we have the Wine Country Racing Association, and it looks like you brought the entire crew with you, which is pretty amazing. We know what it's like to have to get up early and be ready for a meeting, so well done. You will be given 5 minutes to make your presentation. We absolutely appreciate the very detailed report that you provided to council, and we have all read this. And so what we will do is allow Mr. Dell to come up to the microphone and do a presentation. And at the end of that, if we still have any questions, we will certainly ask them then. This is not a decision-making meeting, so this will have to come back to council at a later time. And so we're just here to listen to your presentation and ask questions. Are you okay with that? Mr. Dell, if you'd like to come up to the microphone there, please. I've never ever called him Mr. Dell before, but I think I probably have to. Okay, so you need to press your, there you go. Go ahead, thank you.
I think we're on. Well, thank you for the introduction. So good morning, Mayor McCordoff, councillors, staff, press. I don't think there's any press here today. And of course the audience. And yes, these guys all volunteered to come out. So to hear what we had to say. So yeah, here today we did make a presentation, and I'm glad this submission, and I'm glad you all had time to read it. So it's about our use of the airport. And so on behalf of Wine Country Racing Association, or WCRA, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to meet with Mayor and Council to discuss our racing program. You know, I've been before Town Council many times since our first discussions in 2005. 20 years ago, and after reading past presentations and minutes, I think Gerald Davis and I are the only two that are still here. So I'd just like to take a minute to thank past council, staff, employees for all their help in making our program successful. So Mayor John Slater, John approved the first race. Mayor Stu Wells, Stu often came up to check out what was going on. Corporate Services, Jeanette Van Vienen, dealt with Jeanette for many years. Brianne Hilson and Amy Robinson, who I met with just the other day to make our submission. Administrators, I go back far enough for Elsie Lemke and Barry Romanko. Public Works, we all remember the Frenchman Ronnie Doucette. Mike Thomas, Mike was always around. Frank Zanfleet, whenever we had some kind of issue, Frank could solve it. Jared Bronstein, and of course, currently, and we've met him a couple times, David Gordon. Counselors that helped us out over the time, Carol Youngbird, CJ Rhodes, who was my go-to guy for WCRA and Cactus Jalopies, Ted Cronmiller, who was on council at the time of approval and was a drag racing fan, and Jim King, who we've known for a long time and discussed. So the WCRA has been using the Osoyoos Airport for 8-mile drag racing since 2006. The Racing Association plans hosts 5 weekend events per year, 3 races in the spring, 2 in the fall. Following the policy set during initial discussions with Town of Osoyoos in 2005-2006, the WCRA does not schedule racing on the holiday long weekends. Council and staff at the time felt long weekends would had increased air traffic. So Mayor John Slater approved the first race in June 2006. He informed a group of concerned citizens that he would be on site at the airport to observe the event. There was a petition from the townhouses across the road that didn't want us to use the airport, and they cited things like garbage and traffic. And we have, I still have that in the back of my mind. After a race, we make sure that place is spotless. There's no garbage. The first race was a success. Mayor Slater and council approved 2 more races in the fall of 2006. In the past 18 seasons of racing on the airport, the WCRA, have never received an official complaint or any complaint from the RCMP. An officer on patrol often stops in to check out the action. Until 2023, the WCRA had never received a complaint from the town of Oliver. So, over the 18 seasons of racing, the WCRA has paid the town about $42,000 plus or minus. And the WCRA proposed the payment arrangement to help the town with their share of the airport paving project. I'm not sure of the town's portion of that paving project in 2006, but I would think our $42,000 has gone a reasonable way to offset the town's cost. So I spend a little bit of time in my shop, and of course often have the music turned up. And the other day I was listening to some music from Nova Scotia and whatever. So the Rankin Family, the Mull River Shuffle. So I wrote this down. Picture this. It's 20 years ago on a small community airport, and we're getting all fired up. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the airport race. So
Mr. Dell, that was the 5-minute
Okay.
mark. So could you wrap up,
I
please?
will, and I will do it real quick. A little more on our usage contract, which is all, I think, in the presentation. We are here today to ask the mayor and council and staff to consider ensuring the WCRA a successful future by considering a 5-year usage contract, enabling the WCRA to effectively plan and finance improvements to their successful racing program, and working with the town of Osoyoos staff to allow registered participants to temporarily stay overnight in their designated pit area on the Osoyoos Airport property. That would be the reason we are here today to ask. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much.
And
And please know that we certainly appreciate all the things that the volunteers in this town do to help entertain people that come here. We're a resort municipality. I know that there's lots of people that come to see specific events, and I'm sure Wine Country Racing is one of them. So we thank you for the information that you've provided to us, and we certainly understand your ask. We know that. And so I'm now going to turn it over to council and see if anybody has any questions, okay? Go ahead, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Dell, the only concern I have, I'm looking at this picture you presented to us last year when you had the camping out there. And there's like 3 motorhomes, which when you do the presentations, you said there's like 3 to 5. And there's like 13, 14 trailers, and they're surrounding these 2 little planes. And last year we had a major, wasn't much on a plane, and all of a sudden there's $400,000 damage. And I don't see anything around these planes protecting them and my concern is that I mentioned to you guys 2 or 3 times when you talked to me, is I'd like to see an area, when you talk about this designated camping area, I'd like to see that on a map. I'd like to see you guys sit down with the people from the airport committee and figure where that's going to be. And if it's going to be in the central part of the airport, where you drive in, and then have the planes further north, because a couple of you guys are on the airport committee. And you can make that happen and make sure
Right.
that those planes are way down away from everything. And then this is a Martov designated area, then I don't think I would have as much concern. When I look at this picture, that's what concerned me last time, and I asked that you guys do that, but I don't see that in here. Because your presentation is good. I like everything in it, except that that's my biggest concern is where these things, and they gotta be controlled, like you say, well, we'll just be really careful. Well, you said that in the car, so went on the track when they're not supposed to, so if somebody backs in one of these planes or just hits one of these planes, or you don't know who's all staying in those motorhomes, friends, and they do some damage to those planes, it's gonna come back to the town, because we allowed you to put campers there, so we need some way to protect us to say, if those people do camp there, there's a lot of rules. And I think you guys got the people between you and the airport committee to put that together. That's just my feeling. The rest I like, I think it's good. It's great for the town. It's just the camping thing is a concern.
Yeah, I understand that, and I mean, we're definitely well aware of any planes that are parked up there. As a matter of fact, we were the ones that, the plane that was damaged actually, had reported the damage and said, has anybody noticed that, there's been vandalism or something up there? In parking, when those guys arrive, we make sure that they leave sufficient room around those airplanes, so that, I mean, I would say the people that are arriving and parking their motorhome are just as concerned as damaging their motorhome as damaging a plane. I mean, we all drive on the highway all day long, and we don't run into cars just because we want to run into cars. So, David can speak to some of that stuff when those guys arrive. Like I said, we make sure that they leave sufficient room. The airport's closed at the time, so we know the airports aren't, the airplanes aren't nobody's going anywhere in their airplane. But
I understand that, but in your picture that you submitted to us, if you look at that picture, you'll see what I mean.
yes,
So it's not an argument point for me. It's just a point of
mhm,
of a vision of what I see of, okay, all the motorhomes are parked down here closer to Home Hardware, and the planes are way down at that end. There's a fence across, some way to designate that this is the only place you park and you don't go anywhere near those planes. And I'm sure, because you guys got that own planes, a couple of you, so you know what the cost is and know
right.
this should be. And the other thing is the fire. I mean, we just had two motorhomes catching fire, one at Bassall Lake, one on East Lake Road, and I drove to Penticton yesterday. I mean, they're burnt to pieces. And if one of those got caught in fire right where in that picture, that if you look back at your picture, you'll see what I mean. You could have a real mess because you got aviation fuel. So that's just my concern.
Well,
I'm going to see if anybody else has a question, okay?
okay.
Go ahead, Councillor Chong.
Thank you. I think about earlier this year, maybe last year, Kathy I asked for an approximate about how much in terms of total value of the equipment, because that gives us a clear image of the potential liability for vandalism, theft, and things like that. And calculating it, it was about 2.5 million. So to me, like my biggest concern really is security. I want to make sure like all this equipment is under watchful eyes, and deterrence is the best way to prevent crime. And I was speaking with Sergeant Beta earlier this morning regarding this, and he recommended potentially increasing the number of overnight motorhomes so that we can have more of that presence to deter any potential crime. Because once it's occurred, I mean, I'd prefer to be proactive than reactive. So in terms of all the 2 points you presented, I'm in great support with a 5-year usage contract. And in terms of the registered participants, I think like I would like to see more security. Has there been previous security concerns in the previous years of racing?
Well, I would say for many years, really participants staying overnight had never been an issue. As a group, we always sort of agreed there was no overnight camping. So we didn't allow anybody else other than participants in our event to stay. I mean, if you just came to watch the races, sorry, you have to go somewhere else. But so, that allowed, people that travel from any distance that, and there's a fair number of people that want to leave their car and trailer there, even if they're local, but just having those people staying. And of course, we probably have $100,000 worth of equipment in all our timing and gear there. But having a presence of participants staying always, made us feel comfortable. Somebody's not just going to come up in the middle of the night and slink around and see what's going on because they know there's people there. So I think it, really when the last improvements were done to the airport and that area that became the tie down area, just became a really nice area to park, neat, tidy for the participants. And I don't know if it's because it was more visible. I don't really know. All of a sudden, it seemed to be an issue, right? And yes, when we couldn't have anybody on the airport stay overnight, it's like, oh man, what are we gonna do? We got our stuff, all that, what do we have for security? Yeah. So I think that's why, we talked about, well, we have to have security there, right? We have to have people staying overnight. And, last season, I think we agreed on 2 units to stay there, but, it still doesn't really cover that whole acreage. But so I don't know if that really answers your question, but our position has always been participants only. And I think we really addressed that in coming up with an agreement so that we know exactly who's there. We know their license plate number, we know who they are, their contact. If there's any issues, we have all that information. So I think that too excited here. All that information, or there was a proposal in the information I gave you, how we would register those people, those participants. So I'm not sure, Johnny, if that counts.
No, that's great. Thank you.
So,
yeah.
But
Okay, Councillor Poderica has a question.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious how your 2024 season went in terms of attendance and participants compared to previous years.
it was down. Cliff Meads, who's been our treasurer forever, and Cliff was the one who, really came or was attended to the formula of what we used to pay. So if we didn't have a great season, we paid a little less. But according to Cliff, and I asked David, we were deficit?
We were at a deficit of about $1,500.
Yeah. So
First time ever.
So, and we did, I mean, definitely this, people traveling and, I have no control how they travel, we all know, and I was going to talk about that a little bit earlier, people just travel in motorhomes these days. I'm on Highway 97, man, they go by there every day, north, south, towing big trailers. The days of a little SUV and a tiny, long gone, right? So, and for a lot of those guys, well, if we can't stay overnight, the guys that come up from the coast, we're not going to come up. So, fortunately, we did find other spots, but last year was not our best year, put it that way.
Thank you. Councillor King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I want to say thank you to your group. I think you're a major asset to the town, bringing the events to the town. I happen to live across the street. You are pretty loud on your days, but again, you give people a lot of head notice that it's happening, so people are aware it's going to happen. Your presentation, I don't know, people realize it's 42 pages to go through, but I guess my real question is, have you got some type of agreement with the Airport Association, or where do they stand on you sort of applying for a 5-year contract?
Well, Blair Ogilvy and myself, as well as JF Lanier, are directors on the Osoyoos Airport Development Society. We know the Osoyoos Airport Development Society is working on a contract, but to my understanding, really, the Osoyoos Airport Development Society really has no say on the airport at all. I mean, there is no agreement between them and the town of Osoyoos that I'm aware of as a director. I'm not aware of that. I know it's being negotiated. We do negotiate a usage contract with the town for us to use the airport, but the airport, the Osoyoos Airport Development Society always recognizes us as a user. And I think if you read part of their proposal, they would like to have the fees that we pay to the town go to them. And I'm not sure how that's going to work out. But in the meetings that I've attended, and I would say I attend most of the Osoyoos Airport Development Society meetings, we're always welcome, and there really is never any particular issues that we've discussed. Now, reading the minutes of the airport committee from 2023, I see that it was brought up, an issue with, us being on the airport. And it was brought up by Glenn Harris and Rob Roush, and Zach is on that committee. So I'm not really sure on that, the arrangement right now between the town and Osoyoos Airport Development Society, but I can speak because I am a director.
Well, thank you very much for all of the information and for answering all the questions. We will certainly look at this issue later and look at all the points that you've made. I just have one question that occurred to me. I'm wondering how many of your participants normally come from the United States? And I'm considering the concerns right now. I just wondered if that could be an issue. Do you normally have people from the United States, or are all of the people from Canada?
No, we definitely have racers from the States. Of course, over the years, they vary, right? I can't tell you exactly, but as far as, the enthusiast racer guys in Oroville, Tonasket, this is the closest place for them. And definitely a fair number of spectators that, we get up from that area. So
Thank you. I just wondered about that. So that was just something. Of course, we're all dealing with this on a daily basis. So you know what comes to mind. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for all the information that you've provided. And we will certainly get back to you with any suggestions or recommendations that we have at a later time. Okay?
all right. I do.
Thank you.
I do have another little submission. I did get 2 more letters of support that I would just like to give to
Sure. Could
Amy.
you just give it to Amy, please? And Amy and Lauren?
All right.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you very much for coming today, to all of you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go on next to staff reports, and that would be Financial Services Quarterly Report. Mr. Zackel.
Thank you, Mayor McCordoff. So the financial quarterly services report is before council. Just some highlights for the year. Our general fund surplus was $1.2 million, mostly made up from surpluses from return on investments and sale of equipment. The RCMP surplus was $215,749. Sewer fund surplus $462,200. Water fund surplus $455,805. And the Sun Bowl had a deficit of $38,332. Just ask if there's any questions from council.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? For Mr. Zackel? On the very last page, Jim, you've got taxes under control of the municipality and taxes collected by other taxing authorities. And that always seems to be a bit of an issue with people, because I'm not sure that unless you really looked at this in detail, that you would understand what the concerns are. And I wasn't sure whether you could explain that today, or I know you're coming back this afternoon and it may be something on the agenda later.
I can explain a little bit about that. It's municipal government collects taxes from a number of jurisdictions. They collect taxes for the school, the library, the regional district for their regional activities and hospital, the municipal finance authority, the BC assessment authority. Those are the other taxing jurisdictions. Of course, town has their own municipal taxes for roads, sidewalks, streetlights, things of that nature, parks and recreation. We have the RCMP requisitions that the town's responsible for as well. So there's a number of requisitions where the town council has control of. And then there's the other ones like the school and that council does not have any approving authority or ability for that. So we're basically the collection authority on that.
Thank you very much. I think that always needs repeating because there's a lot of people that don't understand that portion. Is there anyone else who has any questions of Mr. Zackel? No? Okay, well, thank you very much for providing this information.
Thank you.
And we will now look at low-speed vehicles. Mr. Risling, you want to do a presentation?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Just bringing up the presentation now. Yeah, so in front of you is a report that introduces the potential of introducing low-speed vehicles within the community. As council is aware, it is on your strategic priorities chart for administration to look into it, and now is that time. So first of all, the provincial government does provide, that was a tough word, provides the option to permit use of these vehicles. And that authority rests with the municipalities. So if the municipality passes a bylaw to authorize the use of these vehicles, there's still an approval process, which I'll talk about later, but that option is available to council. So from a legal requirement, these vehicles are treated similarly to your car or your SUV or your truck. They must obtain a license plate and they must obtain insurance. It's important to know that the requirements for these vehicles are actually done federally. So there's things like signal lights, brake lights, that type of thing. So there's standard things on a car that are also on these vehicles. Again, that's not monitored by us. That's monitored by a higher level of government. Road infractions would be administered by the RCMP. And there's more information under the motor vehicle regulation that provides further detail on how these vehicles are to be driven, and if they do not comply with those regulations, much like a vehicle, tickets could be issued. So which roads can be accessed? So within the regulation, these vehicles, and this is again BC regulations, they can travel on roads or within the act, they're called, every road is called a highway, that have a posted speed limit of 50 kilometers or less. They can cross highways that have a speed limit of up to 80 kilometers an hour. So this basically means most roads within the town of Vesuvius, they can drive on. There are a couple areas on Highway 3 and Highway 97 that the speed is higher than 50 kilometers an hour. And in those areas, these vehicles would not be permitted. However, they could cross the road or the highway. So as indicated before, these vehicles are treated the same as a regular vehicle. And road infractions, again, would be administered by the RCMP. And I think it's important to note that we did do a little bit of searching from other municipalities. The city of Vernon has actually had this in a bylaw for an excess of 10 years. And they've indicated that there's very minimal complaints. The only complaint that they do receive sporadically is that sometimes the vehicles are driving a little too slow. And I think from a positive perspective, it does provide an alternative, cost-effective mode of transportation within our community. And here's just a photograph of one. They look a little, I mean, they come in different sizes and shapes, but this is just a typical one. And I've seen a couple actually in town actually that are similar, but not exactly the same. So as far as next steps, the council does have the ability to limit the places that these vehicles would travel. So if you wanted to, you're limited to the downtown core or to the west side, the east side, you have that ability. It's not something that we're recommending, but it's something that council can do. So I think that's the first question we'd like to get answered. If council agrees with actually moving forward with this initiative, we need to go to council with a report that's included in here as far as a bylaw amendment to allow these vehicles, and then ultimately this bylaw would then need to go to the Ministry of Transportation and Transit for their approval. And again, we know that takes several months, and they could amend, deny, or do whatever they would like with our proposed. And that's basically the next steps. Administration doesn't really see any issues with this initiative, and therefore recommending that the traffic bylaw number 1256 be amended to permit neighborhood zero emission vehicles and to request that the Ministry of Transportation and Transit to approve the changes. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you very much. I just want to make sure that people realize that these are not golf carts. Golf carts are quite a different thing because I don't think they have all of the concerns that, you know, the registration and I don't know whether golf carts have to have a license on them, or they have to, okay, do you have to? Do they have to prove that they have a driver's license at least, or no?
Golf carts are classified under off-road vehicles, so they don't require a license. Usually they should be used on private property, so it depends on what that property's requirements are. So with the Vesuvius Golf Club, if I recall correctly, you need to have a valid license plate, or not license plate, valid driver's license. So that's why junior golfers can't golf on the desert course, because you can only golf desert if you have a golf cart. So the junior golfers can only play on Park Meadows because it's walkable.
Okay.
Because they can't operate. They can be passenger, but those are, to the best of my knowledge, the requirements. A few residents have shown me their personal LSVs. So they have turn signals, they have a horn, they have front and back lights, they have seat belts, and they can go a maximum, if I recall correctly, of 32 or 40 kilometers.
Okay.
So they're speed limited, and they require a license. Like there's an ICBC class for licensing for LSVs. They're pretty safe.
Thank you very much. I do know that over the years, people who have lived up at the golf course area have driven their golf carts from their home to, and I know that that's not legal. So perhaps, well, you wouldn't want to be taking one of these. You couldn't take it on the golf course, could you? But yeah, so I don't think it's going to make a difference. Could you?
You could take your LSV on the golf course.
Really?
Yeah.
It would be included at like a golf cart could?
It would ultimately depend on the board to
Oh,
allow. But and this is just a soft conversation, so I don't remember what the
Yeah.
specific bylaws are for OGC. But like you can't bring obviously like an ATV onto the
Yes.
golf course as your own personal golf cart. Like there's specific, like we don't want the LSV to have treads big enough to chew up grass or damage
yes,
the course.
yes.
So I'm 95% sure the LSVs would be allowed on the golf course.
Okay,
And that remaining 5% would probably be the board would need to pass an amendment onto their bylaws, so specifically just the wording.
absolutely. Okay, thank you. Counselor King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I support this initiative going forward. I think it's a great idea personally. And to allow it for the whole town, I think makes sense. But I really have the question, if this was to move forward and get passed, as the mayor mentioned about the carts, golf carts coming around the neighborhood and going to the golf course, who would be enforceable? Would our bylaws would ticket them still, or would that be RCMP because they wouldn't confine with this new bylaw?
So in both cases, it'd be the RCMP.
Counselor Pennant and then Counselor Chong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I got the same thing because golf carts, I've seen golf carts fixed up where they have some of the places down south and stuff where they have lights and turn signals and they meet all these requirements. But I think that if we do this, we're talking zero emission vehicles and showing this car versus a golf cart. And I think if we go forward, in my mind, is we have to really define what a zero emission vehicle is. Go ahead, Rod. You
Well,
already
I
got
think-
the answer.
Yeah, so I think it's important to note that all the regulations pertaining to the use of these vehicles and the safety standards, et cetera, are not administered by the town. They're directly with ICBC and other regulations. So I think the safest thing for us to do is to default that decision making. We could show people where the regulations are, but to go directly to ICBC and those folks, because it's it starts getting really, really technical. It's just like if you were to buy some type of made up car, it would need to go through a process to ensure that it meets all the regulations that we couldn't come up with that list of parameters. So I think that's one of the positive things with this whole bylaw is that there's authorities already set up and a process is set up that if people are interested in this type of transportation, I think it's pretty clear. They go to ICBC and they could really lead them on the right path to make sure that they get the proper vehicle to enable them to be legal. So I think that's one of the positives with this is that there's some good experts and other authorities that can actually direct them on what to get. So good point.
Thank you, Counselor Chong.
Thank you. Is there any consideration to potentially make this just a pilot project to start with, like of a 1-year duration, and then also have a municipal like LSV kind of permit with a cost as well, just for cost recovery, because there may be a need for additional signage, and that could cover the cost of that signage.
So good questions, Councilor Chong. A lot of this hasn't been fully contemplated, and I guess my mind first goes to that because it's almost like vehicles. It's pretty difficult for us to have some type of a mechanism where we could add on a surge charge for these to drive on. So I think that's a pretty difficult process to actually implement just because it falls under different acts. As far as a temporary pilot project, I think one of the concerns would be that to implement this bylaw, it takes several months with to get MODI's approval. So it usually takes 4, 5, 6 months sometimes. So by the time we get this implemented, I think you can rescind things later. So I guess we could indicate that it's a pilot, but getting things changed with MODI is fairly difficult. So If you like, I could do a little bit more research on that whole pilot piece, but I think it would be, I think going to Modi, maybe we indicate this is what the change we want to make, and if we run into a lot of problems, we simply just amend the bylaw, rescinding it, and it's no longer available. But we could talk about how it's kind of a pilot thing, but it's, so yeah, so I think it is an option to say that as long as there's no safety concerns, we're gonna keep doing it, much like I think any other bylaw. This is different and it's a different mode of transportation, so I think it's a good idea to keep a really close eye on what actually transpires in the municipality. And if there's some significant issues, potentially rescind this portion of the bylaw.
Well, then maybe we can rephrase it from a pilot project to we have like a mandatory review after 2 years or something like that, so that we can. It's really just data acquisition because LSVs all have odometers, right? So if we can find a mechanism to maybe find some data to see usage, like how many kilometers were used, things like that, and then incidents, then that way we can make sure it is that it's fitting well with the tourist aspect of our town and also with our residents as well. I just want to make sure we do have a mechanism for accountability, so that if it is a case where worst case scenario, it doesn't fit our town, then we can rescind. But I think a mandatory review for this would be wise.
Your worship, I think that's it's a great idea. I know Sergeant Beta is always really helpful in providing us feedback, and I'm sure we can reach out and ask him to provide some type of a report on the usage of these. And also we have bylaw officers that are driving around that don't really have, again, the official capacity to issue tickets and that type of thing, but they are on the roads and they can provide some feedback if they see some abnormal behavior or even phone calls that come in to the town. So we can absolutely do that.
I'm looking at the picture of the car plugged into a charging station. Is that something that the town is going to have to provide for this, or do people provide their own charging stations at their own residences, or how does that work?
Through your worship, yeah, no, there'd be no legal requirement for the town to supply power outlets. That would be fully the responsibility of the owner, just like a vehicle. If town doesn't have to have a gas station, even though there's vehicles, or even the EV stations, some of them are privately owned. It's just so.
Just that we do have a couple in town that we provide, one here and one down at the beach. So I just wondered, would those stations be available to use, or there has to be a different one?
I'm not sure, your worship. My
Okay.
guess is it's probably something less. I don't think these have
Yeah.
the same power, but
Probably.
it's something that we could look into, but I think it's
Yeah.
less.
It just looks different, that's all, and that's why I
Yeah,
wondered. Go
so
ahead.
with typical golf carts, there's an adapter you plug in to just a normal outlet, and yeah, I don't have one, but maybe in the future it'd be fun. But I believe I tried to look up the source of this picture, but it seems like it was taken by a phone from 2005 because it's very pixelated. But I have a feeling this is more of a company that has a pay-for-use rental program. Um, so this would be not applicable really to us, but I have no idea, to be honest.
Just wondered, because that could be a question that we would be asked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it just, this was just grabbed off the internet.
Yes,
Just
I
I wanted to find
no.
one that actually fit on the page, so yeah, this
Oh, I
is-
get it. No. Anybody else? Go ahead, Councillor
Thank you.
Poderica.
I'm just looking here. There's one Canadian manufacturer that identifies as a Canadian manufacturer. Fortunately, right here in the Okanagan, but they only use a 120-volt AC charger plug-in. So, just to support and on that review process, obviously, I don't even want. My concern with a pilot, in the context of a pilot project, would be that in 2 years' time, and we have people who have acquired low-speed vehicles, and now we're in a position where we have to go down the path of outlawing those low-speed emissions. We've got a lot of people then with low-speed vehicles that have no use for them, or a place that they could. So I support the review process, but we're gonna be very careful going down the pilot path if that's the case, because for that reason, that what happens then, we can't grandfather them. They would just have to go. So that I support the proposal. Thank you.
So did you have a question or did you want to
I'm
make
gonna
the
move option
motion?
one.
The recommended motion?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And are you seconding
let
that?
him have a second.
Okay, go ahead. You're seconding that? Okay, so this means that we will bring this back to meeting this afternoon then? No, not this afternoon. It'll be brought back at some further time. Okay, no problem. So all in favor of the motion? Thank you very much. So I think we are 1, 2, pick whichever you want. They both said it at the same time. Okay, all in favor?